Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Wisconsin lawmakers are on alert tonight. We learned Senator Tammy Baldwin and other Wisconsin lawmakers appear on a list drawn up by a man suspected of murder. Federal authorities have now charged 57-year-old Vance Belter with federal murder charges and stalking charges and crimes that targeted 2 Minnesota lawmakers and their spouses. Washington Post reporting that 10 other Wisconsin lawmakers were on this list,
including all 3 congressional members from Wisconsin. One couple did die in the attack, as you know, and now Bolter could face the death penalty for those federal charges. Those are in addition to state charges of murder and attempted murder. As we first alerted you over the weekend, Bolter allegedly disguised himself, as you can see here, as a police officer to gain access to Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman's home. He then shot Hoffman and his wife numerous times. The couple survived. Hoffman's daughter called 911 after Bolter left the house. Authorities responding then to other lawmakers' homes following the report there, including State Representative Melissa Hortman's residence. She and her husband were shot and killed just as authorities arrived. Bolter ran from that scene. He was caught yesterday evening. Lawmakers across the country now condemning the attack, including lawmakers here in Wisconsin. And our Jeremy Wall, gathering reactions from local lawmakers, joins us live now in the studio with that. Jeremy?
Chris, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are upset about the attack. State Representative David Stephan and Senator Tammy Baldwin both condemning them. Stephan says he's never seen or heard state legislators being targeted like they were this weekend. He adds it's very troubling and state legislators need to see if there are any increased security or privacy needs that need to be addressed.
One of the things that I think we should really be looking at is there a way to verify a candidate or elected official's address as being in a district or in a community without them having to put it on the internet? Part of the responsibility in a democratic republic like we have is being available and accessible. I don't know if that necessarily means we have to give people our home addresses.
Senator Tammy Baldwin says the attacks are not who we are as a country. She adds how we can overcome tough times like this.
We must all come together to condemn this type of hate wherever it exists and remind ourselves that we are better than this.
Eli Rosen, a spokesperson for the senator, says, quote, Senator Baldwin was informed by law enforcement that she was included on the alleged shooter's list of names. She is grateful for law enforcement's swift action to keep the community safe and remains focused on the things that matter most here. Guys?
Jeremy, thanks.